Good afternoon. Earlier in the course, I discussed with you the facts on the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. We discussed the legislation and how the bill was passed. And later on, we got down to brass tacks. We got into the actual bill and its contents and the consequences of its inaction. Today, I'd like to give you my final argument against the bill on the grounds of constitutionality, or should I say rather, unconstitutionality. Now let's begin with the Constitution itself. Let's ask ourselves before anything, what Congress has the authority to do in the first place? Proponents of Obamacare will tell you that Congress has absolutely had every authority in the world to pass the act. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called the constitutionality of the act ironclad. And when asked by a reporter if she thought the act was constitutional during the debate, she replied indignantly, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" Now with that in mind, let's get into the Constitution. In Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, we find what are found as the enumerated powers of Congress. They're written out there in plain, simple English for people to read. So I'll read it to you. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, and to pay the debts, and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, to borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and the Indian tribes, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization, to coin money and regulate the value thereof, to provide for the punishment and counterfeiting of the securities and current coin of the United States, to establish post offices and post roads, to promote the progress of science and useful arts, to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas, the power to declare war, to raise and support armies, to provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for the government and the regulation of the land and naval forces, to provide for the calling forth of the militia to execute the laws of the Union, and to suppress insurrections and repel invasions, to provide for the organizing, arming, and disciplining of the militia, and to make laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested in this Constitution in the government of the United States, or any department or officer thereof. Now, that's what is commonly referred to as the necessary and proper clause. And it's also cited very often by proponents of Obamacare. They use it as an excuse to pass whatever law, whenever they want, at any time, about anything ever in the history of the U.S. However, all we have to do is read Federalist Paper 44, which was a dialogue between founders James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, who used the necessary and proper clause as no more than a reaffirmation of Congress to use the enumerated powers. It said no more than, here are your powers, and without the citation to use them, it's almost a dead letter. Now, with that in mind, do we see anywhere in the enumerated powers the duty or the authority of Congress to regulate health care? No, we do not. It simply isn't there. It simply doesn't exist. However, if we continue to read through the Constitution, we will find the next point of my argument. And I'll quote Amendment 10 to the United States Constitution. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. Now what does that mean? That means simply that, well, let's just say, for this simple fact, I'll argue that Congress had absolutely, positively, zero authority or responsibility to enact any kind of healthcare legislation. As a 10th Amendment example, With healthcare, oddly enough, we can look to current presidential candidate and former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. Now, his healthcare legislation in Massachusetts has been widely called the precursor and the godfather of Obamacare. Now, while I will personally maintain that that legislation was bad policy and had dire consequences on the state and its economy and its, healthcare premiums, let's say, it was in fact, according to Amendment 10, a states' right issue. Now, no one ever said that every piece of legislation was going to be good policy or good for the state or wise, but or popular legislation. Let's just say that. However, if it's done under the letter of the law and in the fashion that the founders had intended, so be it. Take example for me with, let's say, the gay marriage issue. Okay. Now, while I'm not anti-gay in my opinions or personal life, I am against gay marriage being legalized. As a Christian, I believe that marriage is between one man and one woman. However, if a state happens to enact a type of marriage legislation or that in effect legalizes gay marriage, and I'm on the losing end of it, so be it. Being as it's a 10th Amendment issue, as the founders intended. Now, let's get to the next piece of my argument, and I'll read for you the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. No law. Now, in response to that, let me read you an article directly from U.S. News and World Report. A provision of the 2010 Healthcare Reform Law mandates that basic birth control services for women will be included in as part of any employer-provided health insurance plan. Among the institutions that will feel the impact of this new rule are those affiliated with the Catholic Church, including its hospitals, charities, and universities. Furthermore, it states that they will be forced to provide services that they consider immoral and as a barrier to their conscience of faith. These services include sterilization, abortion-inducing drugs and devices, and contraception. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Where does it end? Where does it end? Where does it stop? What can't the government do? We need to start asking ourselves the right questions. We need to start reading this. We need to remember why America came to be America in the first place. Why our founders left. Why they started this whole American experiment that we're going through right now. If the government can infringe on our most basic American liberty, the freedom of religion, then what can't the government do? What can't they force us to do? John Adams once said that liberty once lost is lost forever. I don't know about you, but I for one don't want to see that come into fruition. I'm not saying that I don't want health care in the country, and I don't want affordable health care. But not at the price of liberty. That's a cost that's too expensive for all of us to bear. Thank you for your time. God bless. And God bless the United States of America.